everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to our webinar. And our webinar is entitled Get Real-Time Visibility of All Your People and Processes. And I'm Teresa Resick, Vice President of Market Intelligence here at AIIM. And AIIM is your host and producer of today's event. And David, you can advance through. And next, please. And IBM is the underwriter of today's webinar, and we certainly thank them for their support. And thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. Really looking forward to the lineup of speakers we have with us. But first, just a little bit of housekeeping. Encourage you to use the chat feature. Please open that up right now and let us know where you're listening from. And ask questions as we go along the way. You can use either Q&A or chat to ask your questions. And also, we're going to invite you before you leave today to take a feedback survey. I always value what you have to say and want that feedback on how we've done today. And so we will put a link in that chat window throughout our time today for you to be able to, so that you can take that feedback survey for us. And also, we do have a lot of resources to share. IBM has offered a bunch of those, and they're in just one general link. And again, we will put that link out there for everyone to download some resources. Also, there's some things in there that AIM thinks that might be of help to you as well. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to AIM.org's Resources Learning Center page in just a few days. And so now I want to introduce our hosts that we have with us today. And from AIM, we have Kevin Crane, and Kevin is AIM's content strategist, and he also authors many of our ebooks and infographics on a wide variety of intelligent information management and digital transformation topics. He is the producer and host of AIM on Air podcast, and that podcast was recently named to Forrester's 100 Best Channel Podcasts of 2021. And also joining us today from IBM, we have David Jeunesse, and he's the manager of events and communities at IBM. And there's a whole host of things that we're going to be talking about today, but I want to turn things over to Kevin Crane to set that stage of what we're going to talk about. Kevin?
Well, thank you, Teresa. Hello, everybody. Thank you. It's really great to be back for yet another really cool AIM webinar, this time with our friends from IBM. Consider this, consider the old adage, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. This has been a leading mantra of continuous process improvement and total quality management for years. But the question is, how do you monitor your organization's critical business processes? Do you pull data and review reports at the end of the day? Do you walk around listening to workers to get a feel for what's happening? Do you operate more with your gut than with empirical evidence? Often we need a more methodical approach. And the good news is that there are new options emerging that are offering managers real-time information and future predictions of a team's ability to meet their key performance indicators, which brings some refreshing innovation to this much needed task. And that is what we will be exploring today, intelligent operations management. With our guest host today, David Jeunesse, events and communities manager at IBM. He'll be joined by Matt Warda, director of workflow at IBM, and George Warner, founder and chief content evangelist at Horizon View Services, who will share his experience optimizing public sector client services and processes and operations. And we'll see how to easily set up dashboards, modify them on the fly, and take advantage of machine learning for predictions to help monitor, optimize, and improve processes in ways that make a real difference. So with all of that, I'd like to welcome David Jeunesse to this show. David, welcome, and tell us a little bit more.
Well, I certainly will, and congratulations on being the hot podcast. I think that's great news.
Thank you, David.
You can tell that this is a very professional webcast because we have this wonderful virtual background, but it's kind of funny because it looks like I'm having an ear exam by this guy next to me. So,
Right.
but it's visibility. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about visibility. And you set it up very nicely. By the way, I went to a reunion last night in East Village, New York City.
Okay.
And I was in a very crowded bar, so my voice sounds a little harsh, but I'm also a little nostalgic because many people at this reunion are of my generation, and I'm an unapologetic baby boomer. We get blamed for a lot of the things that are happening today, and maybe that's true, but there were a lot of innovations developed in our time as well. And I want to talk about a very important one, and that is the command center. And we all grew up watching the Mercury space program and then the Apollo space program. And really, I mean, when Walter Cronkite needed to cut away, what were you going to look at really is mission control and all of the things that were going on in Houston. And that is really a model that military and business organizations have adopted since then. This idea of the command center. And that's our topic today. Everybody hear me and see me good? Yeah?
Yes, you're
All right.
coming in loud
Good.
and clear, David. Loud and
Well,
clear from Mission Control.
Excellent. The original mission control is now a museum, and you can go see it. You know, here's a picture of it. But here's what it looks like now. This is the modern one. And you can see lots of different screens and lots of different feeds coming in from many different sources of data. And that's really a wonderful metaphor for what we're going to be talking about today. And it is the original model. And recently, the gentleman who designed that last center that I just showed you did a presentation for a number of business leaders saying, you know, what are the things that you need to do and need to have in your command centers? And a couple of quotes I thought really were applicable to today. And the first one he talked about is the ability to customize displays based on the audience, based on what you're trying to know, what you're trying to understand. Because the whole point of the command center was to have all the decision makers and all the data in one place so you can make real-time decisions on mission critical aspects. And of course, in the space program, that was life and death. So the ability to customize the display is important. We're going to see that today. The importance of visualizations to make complicated things appear simple. I think that's maybe half the battle in terms of understanding, stripping away what isn't important, being able to focus. And interesting, what he noted too was that looking at data in different ways as a group kind of creates a community of people as they look at data together. So that's a powerful human, you know, force. And so what we're going to do today is we will meet with a practitioner for more than a couple of decades at New York State, where I would call it certainly one of the largest public sector installations of IBM automation software, with 1.6 million pages added. I mean, this is a big operation, 100,000 users, more than 48 applications, billions of pages in storage, and certainly, you know, an adoption by every state agency and county, which is very impressive. So our special guest today, he ran the ECM Shared Service Center of Excellence at New York, and certainly showed annual savings of 100 million or more. So he's got the credibility and he's got the experience that we need. I'm talking about George Warner, who retired only about a year and a half ago, and he started Horizon View Services. But his experience at New York State and his ability and willingness to share his wisdom make him the perfect guest for today. So George, why don't you take it away from me, and you tell me when you want me to go to the next slide.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. How are you? To Shirley in Wisconsin, a shout out. I went to UWGB. I will share with you that Sunday night, I was on final approach coming home to Albany as Number 12 hit the field with 36 seconds ago to win the game against the 49ers. My seatmates did not appreciate my enthusiasm as we were going in for a landing. Anyhow, let's talk about business automation at a high level. What is it? What does it do? I'm going to tell you my very hardcore belief is ECM, or now business automation, is what you build from. Frequently when people build out applications and they want to start automating processes, they want operational excellence, they don't think of this as the first step. My teams and I proved it time and time again it was. So as we go through this, understand and keep in mind that ECM, business automation, is a technical solution to a business problem. And then Matt will elaborate how you monitor a process to get to a business solution. So again, when you design a content-based solution, business automation should be in the center of the table and you build out from there. And then we'll touch on it very lightly about ROIs and business cases and how you solve business pain and provide opportunity. All right, Dave. So what are public service processes like? What do they look like in 2021? I'm here to tell you they don't look very different than they did in 1921. They are, the workflow is manual, it's person to person, it's paper bound. All of you, even today, you know, if you have to go into somewhere, talk to a government agency, you got to come in with all kinds of paper. And it's folder driven, which means that the caseworkers need to be near file cabinets. So they are tied, anchored, stuck with file rooms. And because it's paper, it's slow and tedious. Dave? Okay, so what is a business process? What you come to find out is every government process is a manufacturing process. It produces a product. It's going to be an approval, a license, a conviction, an indictment. But because of the way things are parsed across different organizational silos, nobody knows the cost of the product. You program will understand what their cost is and their pain, but they don't necessarily account for what the support services have to do, and that doesn't account for what it takes from a facility perspective to support the application. So what do? You ballpark your cost. I've learned this through time, not to do the big consulting reviews where you get a 2-inch piece of 2-inch thick document that nobody ever reads, that takes too long to get. So if you do cooking, and my cooking specialty is pancakes, you follow a recipe approach. What are all the components it takes to make your product, be it an approval, a license, or a pancake? And then you identify your bottlenecks, and then you can figure out your actual costs, and more importantly, what is your opportunity costs for doing things in the current process. Dave? So one opportunity showed up in New York State, 57 agencies. Every agency had its own accounts payable process. They could be manual, or they could be unsupported, or they could be small scale. For the IT folks out there, it was at one point, the Office of General Services was running off an unsupported server that they had to reboot a couple times a day in crunch time. Think about that. And also in New York State, if you don't pay an invoice in 20 calendar days, not business days, calendar days, you then get penalties, interest penalties that have to go to the vendor. So how did this all flesh out? Vendors learn to be patient for their payments because it could take any amount of time. For small vendors, this is especially troubling because they live and die on cash flow. And if the state is slow in paying you, it can jeopardize the viability of your business. So what the governor did is he instituted efficiencies and centralized all the back office functions. All accounts payable came to one agency. And we did this by standardizing on the IBM stack of data cap, content services, and BPM. And oh, by the way, we did this in 5 months. They were some of the most intense months I'd had ever had. Dave? So what happened? It was all said and done. And think about that other government process. Everything is a manufacturing process. Voices start getting paid in 20 days. To IT, an unanticipated benefit was that 3 dozen, 4 dozen staff got released to do other work. They no longer had to take care of accounts payable. For my team of 6, accounts payable just became another application we took care of. But think of the cost savings there. It's in effect, you just hired 36 new IT staff at the same salary. The number of staff to run the back office decreased. Vendors got paid on time, and people knew where invoices were at any point in time. And if there was an invoice that was slipping, you could always prioritize it and get it to the top of the heap. Other things that got changed, again, talk about a process across silos. The amount of support staff you needed to move invoices disappeared because 80% come in via email. The file cabinets to host invoices that have been paid goes away. And since you keep invoices for 7 years, suddenly you're freeing all sorts of floor space for the current ones and warehouse space for the ones that you're archiving. And vendors knew they were going to get paid. Again, especially the small vendors, which have low overhead and can provide cheaper services to the state. They could get paid so they could survive. And you also learn what invoices are out there. In case you wanted to know, the most frequent invoice in New York State out of 700,000 a year was for dairy products to prisons. Who knew? So Dave, let's move forward. So now let's talk about what we're still in the middle of, perhaps at the tail end. We hope it ends soon. COVID. March of 20, COVID came in and just crushed everything. Economy shut down. We all lived through this. I was in a presentation 2 days ago where, there's reports of people did 10 years worth of transformation in 10 months. But in this post-COVID world, you need to be digitized if you want to move forward. Dave? So what does this all come together for the public sector, and how does this relate to process excellence and process management? What we learned and saw with the pandemic is everything got crushed. Think of the unemployment delays that people had to do, because nobody imagined what to do in a pandemic and how you supported a economy and your nation when that happened. And what we learned in New York, after a couple tornadoes, we had to harden gas stations and ATMs so people could potentially flee. But we didn't take that planning to the applications that are needed to support society in the face of a pandemic. So there's that challenge before us. The next 3 kind of tie together. Anything that deals with a client-facing app needs to be 100% digitally capable. You cannot have any manual handoffs. You need a technical footprint that supports a distributed workforce and a hybrid workforce. You also need that footprint to support distributed and hybrid clients, and figure out ways to interview clients when you're not face-to-face. Video comes to mind, and saving the recordings for whatever time frame. And your information chain needs to be digital from start to finish. In the public sector, what does this all tie together to mean? If you go to a hybrid model, in a distributed model, it means all the processes that exist need to be digitized. Not kind of, not sort of, all the process need to be digitized, both the flow of information and the content. And as we saw, we need to be able to adapt to rapid change. So out there in the process arena for government, you have technical debt, running employment systems on COBOL is technical debt. Business process debt, which means you still have manual processes. I have members in a user group that Mike Custer and I are on together, where they had to bring in 100 FTEs during a pandemic to manually move content from a fax machine into systems. You can't do that anymore. And automation debt. Things take time that would take milliseconds if it was automated. And all these tie together because once you get them in place, you need to be able to manage and bring operational excellence to your processes. And with that, Dave, I believe I hand off to Matt.
Well, thank you very much, George. That is truly a picture of and a great prescription for where we need to go. And it just so happens that we have Matt Warder, the program director of IBM Workflow, and a man who understands intelligent operations management and is actually going to show us some stuff. So without any further ado, please welcome Matt Warder.
Hi, there we go. Thank you, David. I appreciate that one-man applause. And glad to be here today. I joined you from Austin, Texas, where I've been for the last a little over 2 years. But previous, I spent my entire life in Wisconsin as well. So if we're going to go on the Wisconsin train there, I shared the exuberance of the excitement of the Packers win as well. And while Aaron Rodgers only needed 37 seconds to produce a fabulous outcome, I'm going to take about the next 20 minutes, hopefully, to get you excited about what we're here to talk about today. So talk about the future of hybrid work management. So from IBM's perspective, and we look at it, and George talked about it a little bit before, about digitizing your processes, right, and the data and the orchestration of work. We look at it as, how can we also increase the value of humans and human labor within our organizations by taking away the redundant work and also looking at the management of that work and the orchestration of that work to produce optimal outcomes for your organizations and the ability to change as those outcomes and priorities and goals of your organizations change. So if we look at work as a whole, fundamentally, what's the process we go through, right? Specifically looking at an automation journey. First, we have to discover, right, what's the work that we're doing today. We can model that out in a typical manual fashion, or we can use process and task mining, which will actually look at what's actually happening from the processes within your organization, the multiple variants of paths that could be taking, identify desirable and the best path forward, that golden path, as well as looking at the tasks that are done within there as your employees work, and identify those that are most appropriate for automation, that are going to give you the best ROI and the outcomes that you desire. So that's the discovery of work. And then we have the creation of work, right? And in an automated fashion, it's the automation of the orchestration and governance of that work between people and systems and bots and robots from that perspective. And then I deploy that. And at some point that work has to be performed, right? We have to do the work, and that work is done by our employees and it's done by our bots. And that's our hybrid workforce that's working together and need to collaborate as a single team. And then when that work is being performed, I have to manage business outcomes, right? I need that insights. And then I go to the management of outcomes of looking at my KPIs and really getting the insights of how things are operating and what are the goals that I want to achieve. And then finally, I want to take that information and continually to optimize my business, right? So I'm not just putting it in place, I'm running, but I'm looking at it, where are further improvements that can be done for the process that I've automated, as well as looking at the savings that Georgia talked about, right? Was it $100 million, right? How do I then use that savings to actually apply automation at scale across other divisions of my organization and really give higher value work streams for you? So if you just click one time, but today I'm going to be focusing mostly on the management of the performance of work and the outcomes of that. Today now we'll be showing a demo here briefly. So if we just click forward, if I look at how do we perform work today, And what do we provide as a way to help you manage that more effectively and efficiently for your organizations? And that is something that we call Workplace. It's the one digital workplace you go to manage all of your work. And we use it to manage the individual tasks and activities that are assigned to us, to manage the teams that we work within if I'm a team manager, and collaborate within there for my other teammates, if those be digital or other human workers that I work within. We've infused this though with what we call our intelligent task prioritization, where we look at using machine learning models that look at the performance of individuals and compare them across their team on their efficiency, their throughput times, as well as your organizational goals. And we prioritize that work for workers individually. So we give them the best work that they're most effective at. And what we've seen in the studies that we've done is just by prioritizing work and getting people to work their best at across the team, you can improve your overall throughput of the team by about 21%. And that's even without automating some of those tasks. We also provide AI recommendations so that for the tasks in there that would require decisions, we can use models that provide recommendations based on previous behavior and outcomes on what's the best decision that you should be taking that they can choose to follow or not. And as managers identify that the recommendations are maybe 99% or 100% correct in what the actions that are being taken, you can choose to automate those steps as well. And then finally, within our workplace, we all know about the work that's predictable, right? We've declared work, we've modeled workflows, we're automating, but there's always that situational work that comes across as unexpected. So we provide the ability to create what we call work streams or situational workflows that you could assemble on the fly in the matter of minutes to maybe do a simple approval process, assign a checklist or something to do, but you can track it and manage it within your own individual workplace to make sure things are getting done and you don't lose sight of that by going through emails and other disjointed mechanisms that we have. And that's really about the individual work. But then how do we actually measure, the next slide, the overall outcomes and performance of our organizations? And that's where we're spending most of our time today, is really getting those insights into gaining control over your business outcomes, not just reporting on what happened, but actually seeing what's happening in near real time, getting the views of that data that's best and most effective for you in a customized view. And we do this through a series of no-code business dashboards that are provided to our end users. They can use that to manage their processes, their cases, their decisions, their content, or their tasks. We have a series of charts, KPIs, and reports to do that. And it's under the covers, we provide several AI features for predictive analysis. So you can not only see what's happening, where we're at, previous trends, but also predictions of what may happen in the future so that I can take action and get my business back in line or take advantage of opportunities that I'm predicted that may happen in the future. We also have what we call workforce management, which is really looking at it from a personalized view, looking at both how our human and digital employees are working together, understanding what's the throughput that they have, what's the ultimate capacity that we need across our teams, looking at utilization rates, and also just understanding what's the cycle time and efficiency that my humans have within the team individually, and providing you some insights into that so you can make better decisions across your processes. And then finally, we have goal-based scorecards. We have this concept of goals, right? So that a process produces a goal. But what we're trying to do here is to say, define your goals first, and then your processes align to the outcome that you desire, not the other way around. And we have a series of suggestions, predictions, and alerts that we also provide within here to help you obtain your goals as an organization, as you're managing that work from a management perspective. Okay. So if you want to go in, I'm going to dive into now and kind of show you how we bring all this together and what that experience is like. But, oh, one more slide. There's one more slide, David, just to set up the scenario. So I'm going to be taking on the role of a fictitious HR manager. Can bring that back up. From that mission control, we have a problem. Anyways, and he gets it back up and running. And there was no disasters. So if we look at it, I would take on as an HR manager, and I have several goals, right, for my organization. I want to provide excellent employee experiences. So I want the process in which they interact with, how they actually submit hiring requests to be excellent, right, and provide the business for what they need. I also have some other goals that are very quantifiable, right? I want to reduce the time it's taking from requests being submitted till we make an approval of a decision on if we were going to actually approve that requisition request or not. And then the overall outcome is, if we can do that quicker, I want to improve the way that we're acquiring talent within the organization. And I have a marker of I want to improve that by 10%, again, by being more timely, and also by providing better experiences and interactions with our prospect employees that we're going after in the market. And to do this, I need KPIs to measure and track my performance. I want to also understand how my workers are doing and any bottlenecks within my process. I want to predict future resource needs of what's happening. So I'm not always in this reactive mode, but I'm really actually one step ahead of our needs, not too far ahead. So I'm actually utilizing my resources effectively. And I want the ability to take action within there. And I've kind of broken that out in the table, right? I want to understand what's happening now, what's most important to me right now in the context of my needs. I want to get suggestions and recommendations so I can take action. I want predictions and I want awareness, right? Overall, I just want to know what's going on and what are the things that affect me and the things that are running great, I don't want to have to worry about. Okay, so with that, let me dive right in and show you how we do this today. All right. So I remember before I talked about that whole idea of perform work, and what we're going to spend a little bit of time here is what we call our workplace. And this is, again, that individual that's getting the work that has to perform that work. And within here, we can see the tasks I have. I can see what's on track, at risk, overdue. In this case, for my demo environment here, everything's overdue. So that's not a good thing for my own personal performance, because I'm looking at my HR manager's dashboard and the things that I'm responsible for across that. I can also look at what workflows. So this is more about the tasks that I'm responsible for, but there are some workflows, and it looks like not all the workflows are overdue, but some of them are actually on track. One of them, for example, in this request for home work resources, as well as others. And I can go in there and I can investigate what's happening across a process. I can see for those that I'm responsible for, what's happened from all the tasks, where is it currently at, as well as the full history, so I can get that understanding of what's happening from a personal perspective. I can also do things like starting new workflows, and this can be those simple approvals or checklists that are available to me, as well as other activities and actions or workflows that are provided, like leave of absence request, and here's my standard HR new position request that we're going to be going through. And I can just go into here and do what I want to do. I can also manage my team members very quickly and easily and understand how they're working from that perspective as well. Okay, now that's about from a perform perspective and individual work management. And now I'm going to dive into, oops, I can get that little bar to not pop up. There we go. Now, how would I manage this from an overall business perspective? And we're a little bit ahead there. So this is what we call our business performance center, our console, our control room for managing your business performance. And in here, we've got a series of dashboards. I've got quite a few here in my little demo environment. We also can set our goals, as I talked about here. And if we look at this, this allows us to basically say, what are either my personal, divisional, enterprise goals that I want to have that I can create. I can say what's the priority. I can give a start date and when do I want to achieve those goals. And those will be used later when we actually look at how do we tie these dashboards and charts to the actual goals that we have, so we can actually see how we're managing to that goal. I'm also an administrator within this environment, so I can also set team permissions. And this is all around that role-based access control to make sure that I have the right teams can only access that information and data that they have permission to. So I have my teams, I have the sources of information that are provided actually from the underlying system itself. So you don't have to go and create these in Discovery. You just need to go and here's the list, who you want it. And then you can also create your data permission sets. So you can just determine to what level of information within these sources they have available too. So if I'm in HR, I have HR permissions. If I'm outside, for example, I may not have that. And even within a team, I can actually even make that much more fine-grained so that it's safe within my organization there. So let's go back to the dashboards for a minute here. And within my dashboards, I can create new dashboards as you see here. I can import other dashboards. So if someone has other dashboards they want to share with me, maybe outside the organization, business partners, or even across divisions, if we're not in a shared environment, we can actually export some dashboards. If I created the best dashboard in the world and I want to share it with the rest of the organization, I can do that. If we go into each one of these dashboards here, I also have some other actions that I can take very easily. I can go in and I can share this with everyone, with myself versus other people. I can duplicate it. I can say, this is a great dashboard. I want to use this as a base for a new one, and I can go and do that as well. And of course, that export for the import. And I also see some quick information here besides who owns it and and permissions is I can see that I've got some alerts. So that's kind of concerning as an HR manager. So let me go in and see what's happening with my business right now. So I go into the dashboard here, and I can see, first of all, a couple of these charts that show me a few different things just on an understanding of what's going on. I can see a trend of the metrics. This is a simple KPI that shows a target that I've had of the number of requests I want coming in per day, and I can see how I'm doing there. I can go and look at those alerts that I talked about, and I can see that's where they were generated because there were some KPI violations, and it's just letting me know, hey, you're in trouble. Maybe not big trouble, but I'm in trouble because I'm not meeting on average, where I want to be from my goals and perspective from there. I can also just quickly see my number of hiring requests that are in flight. I can see how many of those have been actually approved lately, and then how many of these, in this case, have exceptions. And I find that concerning, that I have more processes that are with exceptions than I do with those that are being completed. So I may want to look into that a little bit. And I can also kind of see the average completion time of what it takes from submission all the way through to a decision that is made. I have an internal target of 20 days, and I can see 46 is much further beyond that. So I want to actually start understanding why is that happening, not just what's happening. And we'll see how I do that in just a few seconds. I also can see if I want all the flights. So this is just showing you some information of, okay, what are all the requests that are in flight, with who requested it, from what country, does it have an exception or not, and then have I made a decision on it or not, and I can quickly get that visibility. I can also look at it from the number of requests that are coming in, and these are just samples, right, of different views that I could have. And this is showing me across the countries of where my volume are coming in and how many new requests I'm getting per day, and the volumes as that come in through there. And that's very interesting to me. But what's actually more interesting is I want to say, well, that's great, but can you predict for me what's going to happen looking forward? And in this case, I can see I may have to look at having some staffing ramp ups, because it's predicting that I'm going to have a lot more new requests that are coming in from previous performance, specifically in different areas. And if I want to focus it on it, I can say, looks like Brown, which is maybe France, and I can just go there and look at its predictions and get an understanding really quickly what's happening. So I can make decisions within my organization of how to prepare for that new volume there. And I can go, if I say, you know what, I can hide those now, and those predictions come off. And that's, again, some of the AI that's infused within here. I also want to understand why my processes are taking so long. So this is just a simple view of my simple 3-step hiring process, where I submit, I review, and then I find candidates if it was approved. And I look at this, and on first glance, I see that for some reason, the submission process is taking a whole lot of time. And that's not what I would expect. I would expect that finding and locating of possible candidates is being the longest pole in the tent. And it is, but I want to go focus on figure out, why do I have probably a customer satisfaction issue? Maybe that's leading to all these exceptions that I'm seeing. What's happening there? And I should probably go investigate that. And that's just from a basic understanding of what's happening, trending, and where things are at. I can then start looking a little bit deeper and say, okay, what is my average completion rate versus my active and completed? And if I say how many are active, well, I've got about 20 some of them, 29 to be exact. But if I look at how many I'm completing in my volume there, that's not trending as well. So my completion rate is not filling up, is not staying aligned with my new requests that are coming in. Okay, good understanding. I can look at, well, maybe across my teams, where's all my work? So I can also within here understand, where's my work across my teams, how much work is open, and where is it at? I can look at it, how many is it closed? I want to see my completion rate. Where am I at across my teams? And again, I can interact with it. I just want to see maybe the performance of my bots, how they're doing. You can see how they're averaging as well compared to other employees within the organization. And again, just very quickly and easy way to get that insights. I also want to be able to identify the bottlenecks. So we provide the capability here in a couple of different forms to really look at where bottlenecks, either from an execution time, wait time, and I can see in this point of the process, my bottleneck is around the review new position request for whatever reason. From there, and I can just quickly see that in the context of the actual process flow. And what's interesting about this is, even if this isn't a structured workflow that was modeled, let's say this was a completely ad hoc case management solution, and in this case, it kind of is. we have the models underneath the covers that will actually compose your process flows and tell you what is really happening. What are the paths that you're taking forward? And that's what this is to the right. It's showing me that for this process, the number one path is I submit it and I escalate. So that's not good. The number two path, goodness, is that I submit it, it's being reviewed, and then I find it. So that's actually completing what I would hope to see within my organization. And it becomes more interesting when I look at a little bit more complex processes that are actually assembled for me, and I can see what's actually happening, where my time is being spent on activities, as well as what's happening in between activities. Why are things taking longer? Why is it not progressing? So it's just as important to look at what's happening to complete work as how much time is it taking to transition from one state to the other. And for those processes that maybe are more ad hoc, knowledge driven, I can actually look at that and say, maybe I need to put an automated workflow here to really automate and govern the flow of that work, because we've got a whole lot of weight in between these steps. It's an opportunity for me to take advantage of that. As I progress down, we've been really talking about up to this point around the overall process as a whole, right? But if I want to look at it from a team manager's perspective, and how do I really understand how the people are performing within my organization? That's what these are really for. One, I may want to look at it and say, what's the capacity of my teams and how they're working? What this is showing is for all the work, for all the different tasks I have across my organization, or in this case, my division, what are people working on and how many people are actually doing the work? In this case, it's 10 individual people. So I might want to come in here and I say, I see this find position request, and it's only 2 people are actually working on it over the past, in this case, month. But I know I have a team of 5, so maybe I have too much capacity here, or maybe I need to understand what the other 3 individuals are doing. But maybe I can take the capacity and apply it to, say, my immigration document reviews and compilation, because I know I have 5 people here. And I also know I'm missing my SLAs, my KPIs for what I'm targeting. So maybe I can reallocate resources. But just to give me a sense of what and how many people are actually doing the work that I think versus how many people I've allocated on my team. Another view we provide that you can leverage and create is around total time spent per task. So as a team manager, what are my people doing? Where are they spending their time, right? Do I have visibility into it? So if I look at Jay, for example, I can look, we just highlight him and understand, well, it seems like he's spending most of his time on doing travel reimbursements across all the other activities that he also has. And it's weighting it across, so I know most time here, and I could actually then provide, and if I highlight over it, I can see how much time is being spent at those actual activities, or I can just look at it as a whole to get a view. And in this case, this one's black because that's where all my time is spent. And that's because that's one of my bots that I have here for helping out and assisting in position requests and finding new candidates. So I wouldn't expect that to be doing much more. The one that I find also one of the most useful is around efficiency. And this is what I talked about earlier today about that ability we have where we can prioritize people's work for them based off what they're best at in comparison to their team members. This is really the way that explains it. So if you look at it, it's actually using some ML models that are giving you an efficiency ranking based on time, throughput, touch, rework, etc., on really what are you best at. So if I pick on Mary, for example, here, and I look at what she's done, and if she comes to me as a manager and says, why am I seeing the work prioritized on my list the way I am? I can say, well, compared to what you're best at and your teammates, you're excellent at creating invitation letters to our candidates. And that's why that's always the top of your list, because you're the best at it, followed by maybe some travel reimbursement and et cetera. So I can get a visibility into why work's being assigned the way it's being worked and how that compares to the other teammates and their overall skills, looking at it from an efficiency perspective, okay? So I just want to touch on a few of those things. This is just a little of kind of how you can get better visibility and understanding and control into this. But what's also most important is when I need to look at something new. So let me show you how quickly and easily I can create something. So I want to create a KPI here that just shows the number of requests, let's say per day, that I'm getting in. And I can choose if I want a metric, it's just a number, a period metric. In this case, I want a KPI. And I just say create. And we'll see how quickly and easily I can do this. I then choose what's the source of information that I want to go after in case I have everything. But I'm going to go quickly down here and I'm going to look at my HR new position process. I'm going to select that. And you see, as I selected that, it's actually looking at real-time data and showing me as I go and configure this, what's going to actually happen to the visualization of that. So I look at that. I want to set a target and say my target is actually 15 days. I know we said 20 earlier, but let's set for 15, be aggressive. I can set filters if I want to filter this down by region, country, whatever it may be, and then I can have a KPI specific to that. I can look at from a visualization and set my max, and for this, we'll just say 30. Oh, let's do 40. 40 there, and we can see now it changed on the visualization. And then I want to set my thresholds, because that's the most important part of a KPI, is looking at what are the thresholds. So first of all, I want to set my range. I want to say, well, if I'm under a certain mark, that's probably some poor performance. And if I'm over that, it's probably good. And let's just say that for this, that's going to be 10. Whoops. Then we add another. And we say, if I'm doing over this, this is going to be excellent. And if I say, if I'm doing over 20, that's when I'm really rocking it. And I make that change. And we can see now how this is going to actually display. I'm not a big fan of the colors, so let's go change those real quick. Let's do our normal, red, stop, light, green, yellow, red. And now we can see, okay, I got a good visualization. I say done. In a matter of minutes, I now have this new, I can scroll down all the way, this new KPI, and I can drag that wherever I want, change my layouts, what's better efficiency for me, put that up there, and now I've got a new KPI. I can also then go in and edit any one of these a very similar way. If I want to change a visualization, I don't like the way it looks, I want to change filtering, grouping, any of that, I can do it very quickly, easily, in a matter of minutes with the zero code as well. And if you don't actually like the visualization, say, you know what, I'm a fan of spreadsheets, I want to do some pivoting and other things. Any one of these you just click on, you can actually export to a comma delimited file. I can save it. And then I can quickly open that up within Microsoft Excel. And then I can go and run, whatever other reports and slicing and dicing that I may want to do there. So we provide multiple ways of getting the data, visualizing it, and managing from that perspective. Okay. So that's what I wanted to cover with you today, is kind of showing you some of the possibilities out there, how quickly and easily you can get access to your information, how you can manage it, get those operational insights so you can really have full control over your organization and its performance. So back to you.
Well, I love it, Matt. I mean, you're talking about actually zero code. I mean, you're just dragging things around, and that's pretty cool. And so let's see, Kevin or Teresa, do we have some questions for our guest today that we'd like to post? I will put up the question splash screen here.
We do. Thank you, David. And we would like to invite you all to type in any questions that you have into the Q&A or the chat feature today. And Matt, I wanted to ask this question. You've got a lot of things to connect: people, workflow, robots. How do you connect everything to be able to create these kinds of dashboards?
Yeah, so from an IBM perspective, one, if I want to orchestrate human and digital labor together, I use that within the context of a low-code, no-code workflow assembly, where I could just assemble those together to the best path with decisions to produce, the outcomes that I want. From the dashboarding perspective, though, and how am I able to create all those no-code dashboards that are looking at all those different things? So built into our platform is a pre-curated data lake where we actually are already capturing that data for you. We're putting it into, and it's just escaped me, we're putting them into time series, we're grouping it, and then we're providing it to you in a pre-curated form that you can just use. Now, if you have other information that you want to augment that with, we do provide you the ability to create other events and augment that data and provide, not only what we have flowing through our system, but other external systems as well. And that's what's being all tied together in those sources that I'm using within that system. So very little effort and work.
All right. Dashboards, I think these are really great, really something that can move the needle, but can we add some other more proactive elements, like notifications when certain scenarios happen, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we actually have, and that's what the alerts are actually based off of. And you saw today one form of the alert was just displayed on the dashboard. But those notifications can actually be triggered to take action on other things within there. Something we're actually working on right now, and I can't disclose timeframes and things like that, but that's really the next step in the process, is to be able to identify situations within your organization and then have recommendations and suggestions of what you should do, to the point where even it could trigger a bot, it could put a task on someone's work list, or just fire off an automation to rectify the situation if you so choose. So that's really the next phase of what we're really focusing in on for our evolution forward, of making them more intelligent to take actions for you and respond to negative situations within your environment.
Okay. All right, Matt. And David, if you don't mind, I have a couple of questions for George as well. And I do want to remind everyone, let's take advantage of these experts while we have them here. If you have questions for Matt, George, or David, please do bring them up in the Q&A feature or the chat feature. We'd be happy to get them up here in front of our guests today. But George, I was impressed by your presentation. A lot of parts and pieces brought together. A lot of innovation happened in just months, not years. For other folks that are in the public sector that may be listening today, watching today, how did you align all of those players, the organizational players, the resources that you needed, all the technologies to get the C-suite or the buy-in from executive management? Can you give us some advice on how you were able to bring those pieces together?
There's two methods. The accounts payable, that came out of the governor's office, so that was easy. It was get it done. Anybody who didn't like it, I said, let me know. I'll put you on the monthly report to the governor's office. So those problems went away. The other issue is how you approach this. This is a technical solution to a business problem. Focus on what the business problem is. Where's the pain and what's the scope? Because when you're starting to talk about a process in government, it gets chopped up in all little tiny little pieces and nobody knows the total cost. So you figure out the total cost of the process. In effect, by doing that, you get additional allies, because instead of one deputy commissioner wanting this, suddenly there's 3 deputy commissioners who want this, and make the case to the executive deputy. So it's focus on the business. My thing is, it's the business process, stupid. Focus on that.
Right.
Figure out the cost. Again, the other part is, and if you manufacture a car, they know how much time it takes to do half a screw turn. Government, they have no idea what the cost is. The stuff that Matt's talking about, you'll identify all the bottlenecks once you're up and operational. But the first step is to get everybody to understand the ballpark cost of what it costs now to do something. He's talking about HR. To me, I'm looking at A, unemployment payments, B, getting a child into a home or otherwise protecting the child. That's what you do. And you just stay with it.
Yeah, that's an important point. I mean, we often focus on the possibilities or the technologies, but it's important to start with that process-centric approach, and knowing what really drives the business or the organization. Is that how you prioritized your projects? Was there a conscious effort to do that ahead of time?
You try to find the pain points, try to see where you can make the most benefit with the least expenditure. You always start small and then build out. And eventually it creates its own inertia, because people will start saying, oh, they were able to do this to my process. I mean,
Well,
I left processes on the table because I couldn't get them ready to move forward.
right. Well, isn't that always the case with process improvement? There's always something, hopefully, around the corner that needs to have attention and be improved.
But when it's all said and done, you know, the other thing I didn't mention before, if you got a manual process like we dealt with, within 2 years, that staff will reduce to 1/3.
Hmm.
And
Now,
they're
George,
very-
you also-
and they've gone from being paper schleppers to being knowledge workers. Sorry.
You talk about technical debt. What is technical debt and how do you measure it? And does it give you more justification then to adopt and deploy solutions?
Yeah, it resonates more on the techie side, on the IT side. Again, major systems in this country for client services are written in COBOL. Nobody teaches COBOL anymore.
Okay.
How are you going to keep these things up and
Right.
running? Some priesthood you're going to create, but IT will not focus on the business process component of it because that's not their thing. But the program area, the business area, they want to understand how you're going to help them do their job, how you're going to help them facilitate their business process. And again, some of them are still in 1921 with file cap and just being an innovation.
We have been joined today by George Warner, founder and chief content evangelist at Horizon View Services, along with Matt Warda, director of workflow at IBM, and our friend and co-host today, David Jeunesse, manager of events and communities at IBM. David, I want to turn it quickly back to Teresa here, but just one last question for you. Any closing thoughts for our audience today and how they might move forward and make the most of their efforts? Did we lose David?
No, we have
Oh,
not.
there you are.
No, don't say that.
Can't lose David. Any closing thoughts for us today, David?
No, thank you. I wanted to share with you some links here for a community where you can meet and interact with people like Matt and George and join groups and ask questions and continue this conversation. So just a little public service announcement for the community that has to deal with workflow, which is the business automation community. But perhaps you're doing integration or you're doing middleware stuff or you're doing AI. So there's a few communities here that provide all the people and the expertise and the forums that you need. So that's my message.
All right, very good. That is David Jeunesse and friends from IBM. Thank you, David. Let's turn it back over to Teresa to help us close out our event today.
Well,
Teresa?
just thank you. Just a couple of things here. And as the slide in front of you says, AIM Plus, you might have heard, we've been announcing some things out in social media. On Tuesday, October 5th, less than a week away, AIM is launching AIM Plus, and look for all of that information to be fully out there. To learn more about it, I just wanted to say, put this little earworm into your head of check out AIM Plus. It's bringing together a wealth of educational content for you, in addition to our whole online community and fantastic resources for you. I just wanted to let you know that it is coming next week. We are going to be sharing a lot more detail next week, but it's there. On the previous slide, David had listed a bunch of IBM, their communities, and also he and his team have shared some really cool additional resource links. And so in that URL that Catherine or I have been putting into the chat, check out those resources. That just opens to a whole new web page, and you can download all of those and read all of that. Greatly appreciate it if you would take our feedback survey. Always love to hear what you have to say about what we've been talking about. And so this is bringing our event to a close. And so I just want to thank everybody for your time, for your participation, and thank you, the folks at IBM. And again, David Jeunesse, George Warner, Matt Warda, well, IBM and George with his expertise from having been an IBM user for a very long time. Thank you, everyone, for your time and participation, and we will see you with our next event. And have a great afternoon.
Thank you.